Hello everyone, welcome back to Threpticon. Today we're going to talk about a medieval heresy, within quotes, a medieval religious movement. Um, and they were considered vegetarians, kind of vegans, but in fact they were more like pescatarians, and we'll see why. So who were the Cathars? Were they actually vegetarians and vegans? We'll find out. It's a little bit more complex. It's not easy to just say yes, because these terms, vegetarian, vegan, vegans from the 20th century, vegetarian from the 19th century. So it's hard to apply that to the 13th century, which is what we're talking about today. So who were the Cathars? The Cathars, and this comes from the World History Encyclopedia here, the Cathars, also known as the Cathari, from Greek katharoi, the pure ones, were a dualist medieval religious sect of southern France, which flourished in the 12th century and challenged the authority of the Catholic Church. They were also known as Albigensians for the town of Albi, which was a strong Catholic center of belief. So what does that mean, dualist? That means they believed in two gods, more or less, good and evil. The creator of this world was evil. It was kind of like Manichaeanism. They believed this world was evil, but that the good God would eventually win out and defeat the evil. Um, and they were right here in the Middle Ages. And they were destroyed because they challenged the faith of the Catholic Church in that community, because they had different beliefs that didn't match up. So let's talk about the diets from the same source here. They talk about vegetarianism, that's what they call it, that the Catholics were vegetarians, though eating fish was allowed to credentes and sympathizers, according to this, but some sources differ on this. So there were two types of Catholics, let's say, perhaps three types. Sympathizers would be people just sympathetic to their beliefs. The credentes were the normal, that means believers. They were just the normal believers. And then there were the perfecti, the parfait, in French, the perfects. So those perfects were like their priestly class. And they, were very interested in this kind of purity, kind of like in Hinduism. They thought that eating meat would be somehow impure, and they wanted to be as pure as possible, purify their soul, purify their spirit. Um, so in various sources, there's mentioning of abstaining from meat, eggs, and cheese. And this comes from one of their holy books here. This is the exact opposite of their belief, since they preach and absolutely affirm that acts of union of male and female are wicked and not in accordance with the will of God. Why, then, do they reject meat, eggs, and cheese, made from the most holy elements, if that corruption or formation which was accomplished by the devil in the beginning was good? And whatever that says. Hence, whoever may say this is admirably refuted. Okay, so what is this saying here? Basically, they're saying that sex between men and women, male and female, is evil. We're saying it's evil. So, because meat and eggs and cheeses are all have to do with reproduction, right? Meat is a baby, is reproduced. Eggs is what the female produces in order to reproduce, right? Cheese is that milk hardened. Um, so for them, these were these weren't something that you could eat, because they were related to that sort of source of evil, if that makes sense. But fish, notably, were exempt from all this. They didn't eat cheese, but they did eat fish. Okay, because fish at this time they were believed to be generated without sex, right? They just spawned out of nothing. That was the belief that comes all the way to Aristotle, who believed fish and similar animals, even mice, I believe, they spontaneously generated. There was no sex. There was nothing. They just appeared. Um, why they thought this, I don't know. Doesn't make any sense. The Cathars insisted on the corruption of flesh and of this world, etc., etc. But the fish, they were exempt. They were exempt. So, in the year 1209, there was a crusade called. So some people don't know this. There was a crusade in Europe against quote unquote Christians, right? Heretics. Um, the Albigensian Crusade, 1209 to 1229, right? Southern France, a lot of local kings, they sort of banded together. And a lot of kings from the north of France, from what I understand, were involved with this. The Pope, he had his own, of course, interest in squashing the Cathars. So he called upon all these knights And they went in there and they destroyed. They destroyed. They destroyed as many people as possible. So if you've ever heard the phrase "kill them all, let God sort them out," and then that picture there is from the Vietnam era, used by American Vietnam soldiers. This sentiment is expressed by invading armies, but it comes, it can be traced back to this fellow Arnaud Amalric, who was the papal legate in southern France, and that's what he commanded. He commanded his soldiers to kill them all, because it doesn't matter, if they're good, God will know. If they're true Christians, if they're Cathars or Jews or whatever, they'll get transported to hell. And in ecclesiastical Latin, he said, "Cedite eos novit enim dominos qui sunt eius," right? Kill them all because God will know who are his own. What a horrible thing, but that's what was said. And then there's a famous story related to this with chickens, right? A way to weed out the Cathars because they looked the same as everyone else. Nobody knew who Cathars were. The Crusaders, they would demand that a person kill a chicken. If the person refused, they were then killed as a heretic, right? So that act of resistance to killing an animal then meant that that person was killed. And you can see on the right-hand side here, there's a source for that. There was this bishop here who says, basically there was a person accused, and he investigates into it, and he finds out that the reason for the condemnation is that they refused to obey some of the bishops when he ordered them to kill a chicken, and then that person was executed. So there's attestation to that. So right, and on the left, I just thought this page was interesting because it had a lot of the points we've already spoken about, talking about fish, in many respects, Cathar parfaits, the perfects, resembled modern-day vegans, except that they did not eat fish. Justification was that fish, as they believed, did not reproduce sexually, and so could not imprison a soul as other animals could. And they were attributed the idea of transmigration of souls, metempsychosis, reincarnation. Once again, this was all Catholic. You've got to take into consideration. Everyone writing this is writing anti-Catholic, pro-Catholic propaganda. And vegetarianism is one of those propaganda tools. It makes that other person seem weird and strange and someone you can just kill because they don't obey the rules of society, right? Anyway, this section, these final paragraphs explain that idea. For many centuries, the Roman Catholic Church regarded vegetarianism as a capital crime on the grounds that God had given man dominion over the earth and had provided animals for him to eat. Inquisition records include cases of people being required to kill and eat animals, often chickens, to prove they were not Cathars. Failure to do so meant death. Once again, if you don't kill this animal, you get killed. The mainstream church was hostile to vegetarianism well into the 20th century. In Britain, a government minister, John Selwyn Gummer, could still publicly ridicule vegetarians as being anti-Christian as late as the 1980s, citing the traditional argument that God had given man dominion over the earth and had provided animals for him to eat. Vegetarians are still regarded as vaguely anti-Christian by many denominations even today. I'm sure everyone, listening, they may have encountered that in their life, people just hostile towards it, okay? So, therefore, kind of summarizing, the vegetarianism, which isn't really vegetarianism, I don't consider it. I mean, if you're eating fish or not, that's just not true. So the abstinence from land animals, quote, it's kind of a hard way to say it, but the abstinence from land animals as a signal of danger, right? And a cause for destruction, a justification for your destruction. So those who refuse flesh are not of the faith. That's what they seem to think at that time. Many people still today think that. And then those people, those weirdos who refuse to commit violence to creation, they can be sacrificed because they're subhuman, right? That's the justification. That's what they're thinking. Those crusaders, that's kind of what they're thinking. So once again, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this episode about Cathars, a medieval sect. It goes back. I mean, they had this dualist belief that's very, very ancient. And it links them to other dualist religions such as Zoroastrianism, Manichaeanism. In Eastern Europe, there was a similar movement to the Cathars, Bogomilism, I guess is what you'd call it. All fascinating religious movements, and I believe today, I mean, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the Druze, the Alawites in the Middle East, they're similarly connected with these beliefs. Even I think that there's connections with Buddhism. It's kind of a worldwide movement, a spiritual kind of idea. Anyway, people who believe that, they seem to tend more towards compassion for animal life. At least that's how it seems. So anyway, thank you for watching. I hope this little nugget of history was helpful towards you. And if you liked it, make sure to leave a like or leave a comment. And I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.